but I'm going to show how to make some alcohol ink backgrounds and then use the ink pad and the re-inker to do some alcohol lifting. So before I get right into it, I'll show you just a couple examples. I sort of pre-did, oh dear, sorry, I don't know what I just did there. But anyways, I don't even, there's like, sorry, I'm sorry, now there's something on my screen. I don't know how to get rid of it. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, so this is one example. So I used, I just made a background on the Tim Holtz Yupo paper, and then I used this stencil and the re-inker on some foam, and I'll show you how I did it, but this is one background I created. I also took off the alcohol inking around the edge. You can see how it's like sort of lighter around the edges. So I removed that alcohol ink as well. So that's one example of how to go about using the alcohol lift ink. This is another example of it over a stencil. That one's it's sort of harder to see. Looks better in real life, but I just made a background and then used the stencil and lifted the ink. And then with stamping, I'm sure lots of you maybe have seen this already on tutorials and things like that, but I made a background. It was a solid background. And then
Chantal?
Yes.
I'm really sorry to interrupt. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
But Kathy can't seem to get back in, and she asked me to ask you to get back in.
Thank you very much, because I was not paying attention to that part of the screen. That's why. I appreciate that. So I took a piece of Yupo paper and made a solid, like a alcohol ink background. And then I took this stamp, stamped it into the alcohol lift ink, and lifted the background. So that left that image, and then with that ink still on here, you can then press it onto a new piece of Yupo paper and use it as a stamp as well. So I will show how we did that, but that's just a couple examples of what we're going to do here. So I have prepped some, I'm gonna maybe tilt this down here, let's see. Is that lighting okay? Can you guys see? Yeah, okay. So I've made some backgrounds here already. I will do a few more, but I'm just going to quickly get into a little bit of the techniques, and then I'll make some backgrounds, and if you have questions I can go over it. So these ones I used, all four of these actually. The alcohol ink colors that I used are raspberry, sunshine yellow, meadow, and turquoise. And for the striped ones, I took my little handle, my Tim Holtz handle, and there's two different options for tops for these. There's the felt and the foam. So for applying the alcohol ink, I use the felt. So I just put a little felt piece onto that foam. I took the Yupo paper, what size is this? 5x7 sheets. I cut them in half for this demonstration. If you wanted it to cover the whole base of your card, you can use it as a solid sheet. But for these, I cut them in half because to me, then you mat that onto a cardstock and that's your card. So it's kind of nice because you can get two cards out of one sheet of Yupo paper. So I would suggest doing that.
Question time,
yeah.
Chantal. How do you spell it? You say Yupo? Like,
Yupo paper. Y-U-P-O.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I've never heard of it. Okay.
Yeah, so Tim Holtz has it in, I think, 2 different weights. I'm using the heavy weight. It also comes in 2 finishes. So this is white, it's solid. He also has a semi-opaque that you can sort of see through. So then if you were to layer it on top of something else, you'd be able to sort of see through it partially. So this is the solid white, heavy weight Yupo paper that I am using, but any of his Yupo papers you'll be able to do these techniques on any of his Yupo papers. So 2 stripes, and then I daubed for these ones. I am going to start with this stripe one here. I am going to take a stencil. I'll go with the same one that I had done earlier. So this is just one of the stencils that I've cut. It's like, it looks like little rainbows, kind of. So I kind of liked it with this striped rainbow background. Just gonna lay it down on top of my piece of Yupo paper. Now for this one, I'm gonna take that felt off. I need foam. So I'm about to use the alcohol lift ink. So I want the foam rather than the felt. And if I was to dip this foam into the alcohol lift ink, the actual stamp pad, and then go into here and come back for more ink, now I'm gonna be taking this alcohol ink that I've lifted off of this card, and then it's getting into my stamp pad. So I don't want to do that. So for this stencil technique, we are going to set the stamp pad aside, and we're actually going to use the alcohol lift ink re-inker bottle. I'm going to apply directly onto this foam, just a little dab. I'll bring it close to the screen. Maybe you'll be able to see a very small amount. And then I'm gonna just put it onto my mat and sort of mix it around so that it's like, rather than one giant blob, it's sort of covering the whole surface of this foam. A little goes a long way. It does not take much. There's still some, if you could see, there's still even some on my mat there. So then I'm going to apply it now directly as if this was, if you use stencils with ink, kind of the same way. So I'm gonna just start to saturate this card with my lift ink. I'm dabbing. You can rub too. I just am dabbing. I don't know why. Either works. So you just want to make sure you cover the whole surface. And I don't think that with the lighting in the video it shows well, but like I can see that it's sort of covering the whole surface now. It's sort of glossier looking and the color is getting a lot lighter. So now I'm going to set this off to the side. I'm going to take a napkin, because this ink is still wet that I've applied. This alcohol lift ink stays wet for a while, so it's still wet there right now. So now I'm going to take a piece of paper towel and dab away some of that excess lift ink. Because if I was just to remove this stencil and wipe right away, all I'd be doing is spreading that lift ink that I just applied. I would just be spreading it across the whole thing, and it would be lifting all of the alcohol ink. So I want to get rid of the excess lift ink before I lift the stencil and burnish, whatever the word is, the rest of the product off to give the big reveal. So you can see it's all coming off on this paper towel here. All right, hopefully that was enough. Now I'm gonna lift up my stencil, and you can see already, I haven't even wiped away all of it yet, and you can already see, the lighting's not great, but you can see how that image has now been transferred, and where there was once all that alcohol ink bright color now is sort of a faded, almost back to white finish. So now I'm going to take this and dab a little bit more in case there was little pools of the ink anywhere. I really don't want to spread that ink across my card. So I'm going to dab as much as I can, and then I feel pretty good about that. So now I'm going to wipe away the extra, and I have a really nice background there. So that's one way to use the alcohol lift ink. I really liked this version of it. I thought that was a really pretty image with it, and the color tones, like these purpley kind of colors in the background, it's such a dark, so the contrast is much higher, but both of them would serve their purpose. They have, you know, a very nice look, would be a great start to a card base. So that's how you apply it over the stencil. The big thing to note is that you're using the re-inker, not the pad, so that you're not taking all that alcohol ink and getting your lift ink pad dirty. So that is technique 1. And technique 2, I will take this sort of background here, and I'm going to take a couple of texture stamps. And with these ones, you'll probably want to have, if you want to take advantage of the fact that it can once you lift the ink, you can use it again as a stamp. You'll want your next medium to be ready. The ink's not going to dry in, 3 seconds. You probably have a minute or two once you lift it off of this background, but it's still a good idea to have them ready because the ink is not going to stay wet forever. So I'm going to get a couple of pieces of Yupo paper ready here for my next technique. So I've picked 2 texture stamps. I just want to give a little bit of a sort of grunged look to this. And with this one now, these stamps look like they're black and dirty, but they're not. Like, this ink is not coming off. If you had other ink on here, you would want to wash it off before you apply it onto this, because again, you don't want to get this dirty. But these, it's stained. It's not going to get onto my stamp pad. All right, so this is my alcohol lift ink stamp pad, and I've just got my stamp here. I'm going to push it into the lift ink. I'll hold it up. I don't know if you can see, like, you can tell, you can see it. It's clear ink, but you can see that it's glossy, like you can tell it's wet. So once you've got it covering the whole surface of the stamp, you're just going to pick a spot on your project and push down. And it's okay if you don't get a perfect image. Like, I didn't get a perfect stamp on this one. You can see bits got left, but it's actually, I think, a really nice look. And then it gives you the ability on the next one too to stamp with that same kind of grunge, not perfectly finished look. It's actually, I think it's really pretty. So I'm going to lift that up. You can't really see this yet because, again, we're going to have to dab and wipe that ink away. But while this is still wet now, I'm going to take my fresh white piece of Yupo paper and decide that I want these little crosses right here. And I'm going to stamp that down onto my fresh paper. And ta-da! Oh, I got a fingerprint on it. So you won't want to get a fingerprint on yours, but now I have this really nice multi-toned, multicolored image on here. And the nice thing about these stamped images, where if you had stamped this with, distress inks or oxide inks, you can't go in after and add watercoloring or anything like that, because that ink is going to reactivate and bleed, whereas an alcohol ink is a permanent ink. So this now is permanent. You can watercolor over this, you can ink over it, and as long as it's not a darker color, this image is now safe for whatever multi-medium you want to apply on top afterwards. So that's the cool thing about that. Now back to this guy. You want to take your paper towel again, dab away the excess ink first, just like last time. So you're not wiping that lift ink across your beautiful background. And then once you've dabbed away the excess, then you're safe to sort of give a gentle scrub. And there we have our resist again. So you can see, obviously I'm just using a texture background stamp, but the possibilities with this technique are endless. I mean, at Christmas time, if you had a beautiful blue background and then you stamp snowflakes like this on it, that'd be so stunning. Just tons of options for that. So that is my demo for today. Does anybody have any questions, anything that they want to see more of, or just see again in general?
Silly question. How did you actually create the pattern first? Like, just simple?
Sure. Okay, let's do alcohol ink. Yeah, alcohol ink background 101. I'm going to use these same colors again because I love bright, colorful, rainbowy type backgrounds. So I'll grab a couple Yupo papers because you can usually get a few off one application. So again, I'm going to remove that foam now. The foam was for the re-inker of the alcohol lift ink, but I'm applying alcohol inks, so I want the same handle but the felt tip for that. And I'm going to take my 4 alcohol inks, so raspberry, that is the sort of pinky red, and I'm gonna start, Julinor, with this where did I put them, with this striped background, And then once I've made that, I will go ahead and create a background like this with the same piece of foam. And then if I still have enough ink left, I'll make one of these with the same foam as well. But I'll show you as I go. So raspberry was the first stripe that I put on.
And that's different from the rainbow card from a couple of...
This is very different, yeah. That one was, you couldn't do these techniques with that one. That one was, they were almost like enamel accents. I can't remember what they're called right now. Crystal drops. Yeah, this is different than that. So this next color is Sunshine Yellow, and I'm just putting just a line of it down my felt. It does not have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be straight. It doesn't even have to be consistent. I'm just sort of doing a very loose line down my felt with each of these 4 colors of alcohol ink. So I did the pinky color, then the yellow, then the green, and now I'll do the turquoise. All right, so you can see I've just applied 4 lines of alcohol ink. Now, I am going to take my card. I'm going to do the lines horizontally for this one. So I've got my pink at the top. I want my pink at the top. So I'm just going to hold it sort of straight and drag it across the paper. Pick it up, drag it, pick it up, drag it.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty. And then, oh shoot, I'm not super happy with how that turned out. I actually am. It looks awesome, but pretend I wasn't. Darn it, I squiggled a line or something. The nice thing about alcohol inks is you can go over it and over it and over it. The colors, they stay true. So I'm just gonna swipe again.
Oh, wow.
And give it just I'm gonna be more precise in my lines here. So there is that background. Then I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to take my next Yupo paper and I'm going to just very firmly push down clean dots all the way, because there's still so much ink on here. It's still quite wet, so I'm just dot, dot.
I'm amazed how much ink there still is.
Yeah.
In that.
Well, because the felt doesn't absorb it. It's just holding it there. So every drop of alcohol ink that I applied to this felt is just sitting there waiting to be used. None of it is getting absorbed into this piece of felt that I can't draw out of it and apply to these papers. So that's that polka dotty one. Now I'm going to set that aside and take my third card background, all with the same piece of felt. And this time I'm just going to dab, 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 over and over. And you can keep going over the same spot and it just gets cooler and cooler and cooler the more times you go over this surface. You can tell it's starting to run out now because I've got there's like quite a few white spaces being left behind. But that is that.
Wow.
Sort of modeled look. And again, you can just, if you're not happy with it, you just keep on going until it's exactly what you want. There's never, like, you can't do it too much. It will just keep, in my opinion, getting prettier and prettier. And the cool thing about these too, like, if you are more, let's say you were doing a Christmas card and what you really wanted was like this stamped image here, not necessarily, you don't want to have to make a new background every time you want to stamp. You can keep, this is almost, for alcohol ink purposes, is almost like a stamp pad now. So I can keep on taking my stamp, dipping it into the lift ink, grabbing, stamping, and then with the same one, go at it again and keep using it as a stamp pad for this textured look. Does that make sense?
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. You
Yeah.
created a stamp pad without
Exactly.
thinking about-
And like a very cool, like multi-toned, like you would never find a stamp pad that's like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's 3 really cool backgrounds with 1 application of the felt, 4 colors, and 3 very, I think, very different and very nice looks.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Does anyone else have any questions? Awesome. Well, that was demo number 1 for today then. I did record it, so I'll put it up on YouTube. The quality won't be great because it's like the videos from the side, but it will still give you all the information if you can't remember how to do something. It'll have everything that I've just mentioned now available to you there. So if you can't remember something or couldn't remember how to do it, you just feel free to check that YouTube video. And if you still have questions, just let me know.